broad numbers. So many people just want to look at broad numbers and make judgments without looking at the underlying things on why those numbers and everything.
Guys, I'm trying to improve my lighting skills here. I don't think I'm doing any better. Folks, I thought I had beat to death the topic of the market. But apparently I was wrong and I have not, because Jeremy over at Financial Education made a video about real estate.
So real estate matters a lot.
Which is totally cool because I love the fact that other people are talking about real estate, and pretty much everybody knows that I'm all about fostering debate and encouraging different perspectives on the market. But he referenced me at the beginning of his video and didn't agree with me. Jeremy! No, it's okay, really. It's fine. It's fine. Everybody's entitled to a different opinion, and that's fine. I appreciate it. But we're gonna deconstruct Jeremy's argument, and we're gonna talk about it right here, right now. Let's go. First, let us clarify the difference between a crash and a market plummet. A crash is when we see a dramatic change in what is happening in the market. I've referred to this as an inflection point. When we see that houses have hit the market for the same price as they were hitting the market at the beginning of the year, based fairly on all available statistics and comps, and they're not selling, then it's a sign that we have hit an inflection point, sadly one that is leaning downwards. When we see a plummet in sales volume, when we see a plummet in the amount of people applying for loans at lenders, when we see a plummet in the amount of people applying for refinances, these are all hard data that tell us we're at an inflection point. We don't know what's going to happen. But when we see this sudden drying up of sales volume, buyer demand, and houses that are priced in line with what was the market aren't selling anymore, we know that the market has crashed or come to a halt in terms of what the market was. Now, we are in a new market. So that market's dead. The beginning of 2018 market crashed. Done. That car is totaled. Now we got to get into a new car and sort of adjust and figure out, okay, what market are we in now and what kind of muddy waters do we need to navigate now? Did you see how I just went from an analogy on the market to an analogy on cars to an analogy on water naval stuff? What is wrong with me? I'm sorry. So no, real estate is not plummeting, but the market has crashed. The market that we've known, the market that was going up, doesn't exist anymore. It's totaled. We're at an inflection point, and the market is adjusting. Whether that means the market's only going to go up 2% a year, or it's going to fall 10%, or it's going to fall 30%, or everybody's wrong and the market's going to keep going up at 10% a year, whatever. The point is, the way things feel out there and the actual things that are happening on the ground ain't pretty. And that's what I'm coming to share with you. But let's clear up some more misconceptions first. Let's specifically start with Jeremy at Financial Education and his interest rate argument. Jeremy sets up the argument that interest rates are simply something we need to get used to, and I need a longer mic boom.
And at first you have the adjustment of, oh man, interest rates are so expensive now. I got to pay 4.5% versus 3% a few years ago. Then all of a sudden it continues to rise, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, maybe I should get in now at a 5% interest rate rather than an 8% interest rate a few years from now.
I think that's wrong, and I don't think people FOMO to buy a house at an interest rate today because they have a fear of higher interest rates tomorrow, which is the crux of Jeremy's argument.
And people are going to be start to go into the mode of fear of missing out, like, oh my gosh, interest rates might go to 15%. We need to start buying and whatnot.
But let's analyze this a little bit deeper.
You got to look deeper with these things.
See, housing is unique because buying a house is not a mandatory decision somebody has to make. Somebody can either continue to rent or somebody could decide to become a renter. Instead of being a new home buyer, somebody could sell out and just decide to rent. In fact, a lot of my clients have done just that. They've sold because they felt that markets were approaching heights and decided to wait and rent. Maybe not a bad idea now that the market's doing what it's doing. Not suggesting that, just saying that's what other people have done. See, housing, much like cars, is one of the most interest rate sensitive industries that exist. Rates directly correlate to what people can afford, and because people have an alternative option, they can rent, they don't need to be subject to paying a premium for housing despite rising interest rates. When the price of gas goes up, we all get mad, but we sadly still have to buy gas because we have to get around. We might be able to reduce discretionary driving, but when the price of housing goes through the roof, we could all just decide to rent. And because of that, housing prices are directly correlated in a very, very hard and fast way to interest rates. That is, if somebody says, I have a monthly housing budget of $2,700 per month, and let's just for a moment here make this math very, very simple. Let's forget about property taxes and insurance and repairs and all this other stuff, because this is just a hypothetical argument here. Let's say somebody has a budget to spend $2,700, and they can spend $2,700 on rent, or they can spend $2,700 on principal and interest for a $600,000 house, assuming they financed the entire loan, 100% financing. So if you want to do the numbers with me, $600,000, 0% down. Let's start with a 3.5% interest rate. At 3.5% on $600K on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, somebody would have exactly a $2,700 payment. But now, let's just raise the rates 1%. Let's take rates from 3.5% to 4.5%. If nothing else changes, the person's payment on that $600,000 house would go up to $3,040. That's an increase of $340. That's a car payment for a lot of people. As a result, budgetarily, it might not make sense to purchase that house anymore. It might make more sense to stick to the $2,700 rental, because maybe the person who might otherwise be buying doesn't see the benefits of buying to be greater than $340 that they would be saving if they just rented. Now let's see how much we would have to drop the price of that property if we wanted that person to still buy and have their payment be $2,700, because say rents are still $2,700. Maybe rents aren't going up. The price of that property would have to go down to $533,000. That is over a 10% decline in value due to a 1% increase in interest rates. Folks, that's a lot. That's huge. That's crazy. So when people go, oh, rates just went up 0.5%. Yeah, that's a lot. Now keep this in mind. Jeremy tells us that, oh, well, I may as well just swallow the pill and buy this house for that $3,040 payment, because what if rates go up to 7%? What if rates go up to 8%? Well, let's figure out exactly what happens if rates go up to 8%. If rates go up to 8%, somebody's payment on that $600,000 loan would go from $2,700 at 3.5% interest to $4,613, an increase of almost $2,000 for the same property. Now, let's say somebody can still rent that for $2,700. For somebody to buy it and have their payment be $2,700, the price of that $600,000 house, due to the increase from an interest rate of 3.5% to 8%, would have to decline to $368,000. So if somebody buys it for $368,000, they can afford to pay 8% interest and still have the same payment as they would if they were renting. So to say that interest rates are like gas prices, in that you just get used to it is what it is, and you know what, it's just gonna cost me $50 more in gas this month because gas is now $5 instead of $4, is crazy, because we're talking about a small adjustment in rates creating huge financial burdens for people. And see, sadly, real estate is also a very slow industry. In 2012, when interest rates were dead low, it took almost a year for people to start realizing that interest rates were low and it made sense to buy. It has been 8 months since rates have really normalized around this 4.5% point, and we are just now seeing the ramifications of this starting. This is the start. I don't know where we're going. I have my own predictions that I think prices might fall 8% by the end of the year. We'll see what happens. But I think that this is a significant adjustment to what interest rates are doing. And I also strongly believe that the Federal Reserve will not continue to raise their interest rates because of this. So keep that in mind. People don't get into a house because of FOMO. People can just choose to rent.
You gotta look deeper with these things.
Yes, I agree, Jeremy, that taxes and new tax reform changes not only insult states.
Okay, for these two states, New York and California, taxes have changed for the worse for these folks.
Where the property tax deduction is limited to $10,000 a year.
You can only write off $10,000 in property taxes per year.
Which, by the way, really only affects home buyers buying homes for over $825,000. We have other tax decisions that are really hurting real estate as well, primarily the doubling of the standard deduction has made it very difficult for people to make that move and purchase property as opposed to continue their interest in renting. But all of this aside,
It is crashed.
I just want you folks to take away that prices are 110% declining right now because of the rise in interest rates.
And next thing you know, we're gonna have an interest rate of 7, 8, 9, 10%.
And prices will continue to decline until interest rates stop rising, unless rents dramatically increase from points where they are now, or wages dramatically increase. And I think we already know that wages are having a hard time keeping pace with the growing economy. So we're in a little bit of a pickle. So now let's deconstruct the argument of housing starts. To say that it takes time to go through all of the Title 24 energy codes in California and the building permit process.
It's a long process. First, you gotta bid on the land, then you gotta do all the excavation, you gotta get a million different permits.
And it takes years for builders to finally get to the point where they can start construction, and therefore housing starts are low, in my opinion, is wrong. The reason I think that's wrong is because this is an ongoing data trend. We did not all of a sudden start implementing rules and codes that make it a long building process to get to where housing starts can be counted. That statistic, housing starts, has existed for quite a long time and continues to take into account for different building processes and what people have to go through to be able to start building. So I don't think that all of a sudden there's an inflection point in housing starts because it's a process to get housing started. There is the argument that you made that, well, maybe there's a shortage of land. Well, maybe there's a shortage of land to develop because builders aren't willing to pay the price that land sellers or people who might be land sellers would be willing to sell their land for. And the reason builders aren't interested in paying higher prices for land is because it's not worth it. When builders do their numbers and analyze, well, wait a minute, what is happening in the market right now, and how is this going to predict what's happening in the market in 2 years? Because keep in mind, a builder can buy land today, they're not going to be selling the units for 2 years. So they need to keep in mind, oh my gosh, wait a minute, if prices are having problems today and the real estate market's hitting a wall today, what's the market going to be like in 2 years when I'm selling these properties? Maybe I'm not that motivated to build right now. And guess what? I just went to 4 new construction developers here in Southern California. Every single one of them is either dropping prices or offering very large builder incentives to not just agents, but to buyers to get people to buy right now. To me, that's a sign of panic, because what happens in the sales office trickles up to the management at the builders like the Toll Brothers or Lennar, and all of a sudden, what do? They stop buying. Because if the market is going to fall harder, if interest rates are going to increase and prices are going to fall harder, builders are not going to start projects. No builder wants to be caught with their pants down in 2006 or 2007 again, which happened to too many builders, and then they end up filing for bankruptcy. The bottom line is, builders have to adhere to extremely stringent construction loan standards. Construction loans are issued on a draw basis, which means you don't get all your money up front. You have to sell your product before lenders will give you more money. And maybe builders have a shortage on money because they're not selling all their inventory right now. Hence, again, the real estate market hitting a wall because of interest rates. So these things are positively correlated with each other. So always come to me if you want to talk about underlying data, because I love talking about this stuff and I love sharing it. And Jeremy, I would love to debate this further with you. Let's keep talking. Let's keep the dialogue strong. Folks, if you have not yet subscribed to Meet Kevin,
Everything has a cause and a reaction.